Alrighty fit folk, in today's video we're talking about how many calories you should be eating to lose weight. We're going to go through 5 ways to set them, starting from the very bad to the very good. So we've got fixed targets, body weight multipliers, online calculators using percentages, and then adjustments. We're going to use some real data from the dietary reference intakes in America to try and debunk some of the terrible myths in the fitness industry we have about calorie needs. Alright, let's start with the bad. Fixed targets. Putting everyone on the same calorie amount is just ridiculous. It's nutritionally illiterate. It shouldn't happen. If anyone tries to sell you a program where all the women are on the same number, the men are on the same number, don't buy it. It's stupid. Okay, here's a good example. All women needing 1,200 calories to lose weight, or men needing 1,800 calories to lose weight. Now, you might see this in some medical bodies or whatever, but it's just ridiculous. If you look at some real data from American women, a typical American woman needs almost 2,400 calories. You're putting them on half the calories that they need. There are 10–15% of the population need 3,000 calories or more. Putting a woman that's needs 3,000 calories on 1,200 calories is just cruel. It's going to be bad for physical health, mental health, hormonal health. It's stupid. It's just ridiculous. So fixed calories. Steer clear them with a barge pole. I'm going to throw up some data now from the dietary reference intakes, and you can just see how varied the calorie needs of people are. And this is why we simply can't tolerate fixed calorie targets. It is no good. No. Okay, next up we've got body weight multipliers. Now, on one level I like body weight multipliers because they're not pretending to be accurate. But I do think there's a bit of a blind spot in the fitness industry about this, and I'm going to explain it. Typically, you'll see if you go to a bodybuilding website, people will tell you that you maintain your body weight at around 14 to 16 calories per pound of body weight, and then if you want to lose weight, it's something like 10 to 12 calories per pound of body weight. Now, for your average heavy kind of 200, 220 pound man, that's absolutely fine. But when people get lighter, these are really, really not very accurate. What I've done is I've taken all that data, those 600 data points from out of the appendix and kind of worked it around. And I want to show you what the true level of energy needs is for people's maintenance. And actually what we see is that it varies from something like 8 calories per pound. So if someone has a terribly low maintenance, 8 calories per pound, all the way up to 28 calories per pound. And what this means is that these kind of traditional multipliers are way, way, way too simplistic. So if you want to use a multiplier, you need to look at a broader range, and that is something like I would suggest test all the way from 10, maybe if you're heavy and very sedentary, all the way up to 16, even 18 if you're quite athletic. All right, next up, online calculators. Now, if I'm really honest, online calculators bother me because they always say accurate and they give you a point estimate. So like, you know, if I do mine, it'll be like 3,112 calories, which makes me think, oh yeah, that's really accurate. Yeah, and if you go back into the maths behind them, they are terribly, terribly inaccurate, and they should all have a plus or minus 500 on them because the people that design them don't understand how inaccurate the original equations are. Now, I'll just give you a really simple example. This is how pretty much all online calculators are built. What they do is they take your BMR using something like the Mifflin-St. Jean, which is pretty good for the BMR. It'll give you your basal metabolic rate is kind of within, most of the sample will be within plus or minus 10%, and then I think almost all the sample will be plus or minus 20%. So that is pretty accurate. But then what they do is they multiply it by your activity level, which is the kind of multiplier between your total daily energy expenditure and your BMR. And they'll just say, oh, well, based on your exercise, are you kind of sedentary, light, medium, or active? And they give you these numbers, 1.2, 1.375, 1.55, 1.7, and 1.9, yeah? And people are just supposed to take a guess. Yeah, and you know what? This is not remotely representative of a real sample. You'll find that actually there's a big chunk of people off the far end of this, well beyond 2, where online calculators are completely useless. And also, we tend to say that the activity level is based on our exercise level, when actually it's really complex. It's like, what are your genetics? How much do you fidget? what are you doing during your day? If you sit at a desk job all day, you can have 1,000 calories less than a manual worker. And this activity level is really complex. The people using these calculators and pretending like they're accurate are absolutely kidding themselves. They've got no idea. I want to show you, I'll throw you up some data now and show you what the true activity levels are of a sample of 600 people. And then you'll realize that if you're going to use an online calculator, all well and good to have a guess, fine. But don't pretend like it's accurate. Whenever you use one, just remember it could be plus or minus 500 calories, and I'm not kidding, it really could be that far, because calorie needs are extremely variable, and also calorie needs change a lot depending on what you're doing in terms of your diet and exercise. All right, number 4 is percentages. Percentages are awesome for 2 reasons. Okay, first is they imply that you've been tracking your maintenance to work out where you're at before you start, which is just killer. It means that you're a long way ahead of most people and you've got a rough idea of what your maintenance is. And secondly, even if your rough idea of what your maintenance is wrong, even if your tracking isn't particularly accurate, your target setting is going to be pretty good, because 20% off an inaccurate number is going to set you at the right spot just as well as 20% off an accurate number. And it's a relative percentage, and that's really, really good, because at the end of the day, nobody is precise with their tracking. Even kind of bodybuilders who are tracking every macro, there's different amounts of energy in different types of macros from different foods. So it's about that relative cut, and so they're awesome. Anyway, I'll give you a rough idea. So let's say if you needed, 3,000 calories, you could have some choices here. So I'm going to talk about a small, medium, and large deficit. If you really know what you're doing, you're tracking all your macros, you could start with a small deficit. This is someone trying to get lean, adding a bit of activity. Typical general population, a good idea is kind of a medium deficit of about 20%. Wouldn't need to be every day. You could use it 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week. And then for somebody who needs to lose a fair bit of weight and is quite new to stuff and isn't very accurate, then you could be quite aggressive, which would be up to a 30% deficit. I wouldn't recommend that for leaner people, but for people who really are going to need some results early on, there is an argument for losing a bit more at the start. All right, to give you a rough idea of what this might mean, I've applied a 25% deficit to our whole sample of data that I had there. And basically this gives us 2 kind of bell curves. And what it'll show is that for a typical woman, remember these are the average American woman who's generally quite overweight. So this is a starting target and it'll have to come down. But in the middle, the average woman, a good starting target would be about 1,800 calories. If she's got low energy needs, if she's stuck in a desk job, not much muscle mass, for a better starting target is down around 1,400 calories. And someone who uses a lot of energy, maybe bigger, athletic or whatever, could have a starting target up around 2,200 calories. This is just a rough idea to give you an idea of the distribution. I'll flick the data up in a second. And then for a man, we've got 2,000 calories is the low ebb, so this is a guy that, doesn't move or whatever. A more typical guy can start up around 2,400, although he'll probably eventually have to cut further. And then someone with high energy needs can cut right up at 2,800. Now, that's amazing if you can start losing weight at 2,800 calories. But if you look at the data, it's actually quite possible, and then that's going to give you a lot more room to do things in the long run. I'll throw the data up now so you can see. Maybe press pause if you want to have a look at this. Here's the women's and here's the men's. All right, last up, number 5, the single best way to set your calories is to start up with a decent number and then to make very, very patient adjustments as your body adapts. Now, people don't often understand this, but as you lose weight, your body is going to adapt. Your hormones will send signals to your brain. It'll find out you're losing weight. And what will happen is it will down-regulate your energy expenditure and up-regulate your hunger. And so to continue progressing, every little while, maybe every kind of 3-4 weeks, you might need to cut calories down another 100 calories. This is exactly what bodybuilders do. They set up 5 low days, 2 high days. I'll show a graph here of basically someone doing that and then making very small. They make only 50 calorie adjustments, just kind of 12 grams of carbs or kind of 6 grams of fat or whatever, and they'll just drag it down. So we take our average man, our middle ground man, and what you see, his fat loss phase may start up at 2,400 calories, but then after a couple of months, if he adjusts down every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, as progress dictates, he may end up at 2,000 calories for the mid-range woman, It started up at 1800 calories and she gradually ended up at 1400 calories. And the key is to not make your adjustments too rapid, because you can get fooled by water loss and this, that, and the other and make a really rapid adjustment. And all that does is it digs you really deep into the deficit. And yes, you will lose weight. You'll continue to lose weight, but you make it really unsustainable and you might jump into that kind of binge and bust cycle and not really knowing what you're doing. All right, let's tie a bow on this puppy. Fixed targets. I hate them. It's like telling every woman in New York to stick on a size 6 shoe. It's ridiculous, nutritionally illiterate. Don't go near it with a barge pole. Second, multipliers. Don't mind them because they start with the idea of getting a rough estimate and then adjusting, but we need to kind of think more variable about them. With heavier people, you can go for a lower multiplier like 10, whereas for lighter people, you want to have a higher kind of 12, 14 multiplier. Calculators, make sure that you understand that it is rough estimate. Plus or minus 500 is a really good idea. Just know that it's an estimate. Don't freak out if that doesn't work because, you know, the calculator was inaccurate. Percentages, love it, means you're tracking first. A really good one, I think, is minus 20% for 5 days of the week. So that's kind of your 100%. That's a really kind of great kind of way to start if you are tracking what you're doing. And then lastly, adjustments. This is where it's all at. This is what most people can't do because it takes consistency, and being consistent is the absolute key, because if you can be consistent and then make a minor adjustment, you can do crazy things to your body. And that is why bodybuilders can get lean and normal people can't, because it actually takes a lot, because you know, you're fighting against your body, you're fighting against your food environment. It's really hard. Now finally, really simple. I know I've gone into the numbers and the maths and that, but if you eat as many calories as you can while losing 0.5 to 1% of body weight a week, that will hold you in very good stead. I hope you enjoyed that. Give it a share if you liked it, and just remember that you are an individual and you shouldn't be getting your macros or your calories from anyone else. Look at this list of some of the best bodybuilders in the world and you can see the variability of their low point in their diet was absolutely huge. So you're going to need to experiment and then make adjustments to make it work for you. Jump on the email list if you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you jump on the email list and get our 5 simple strategies to start losing weight cheat sheet.